Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Tasliman kathiran kathira. From Abadu, my brothers and sisters, we will spend some more time on the Battle of Badr because it's a very important battle. It's a very important event, not just a battle. It's an extremely important event in the history of Islam. It's a defining moment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it the criterion of judgment, it called it a defining moment. And even though militarily speaking, it was a very small thing because it lasted just a day and it was not, it was not a sort of a campaign and there was no, it was not the investing of a fort or anything like that. It was minor in a military way of looking at it, but in the context of the history of Islam, it was a completely different story. It was a defining moment. It was a very, very critical event, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself gave it that importance, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Quran about this battle, the battle of the battle of Badr, and so let's spend some time now in Surah Al-Anfal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this surah on the occasion of the battle of Badr, which happened on the 17th of Ramadan, 2nd Hijri. And Surah Al-Anfal is a divine commentary on this battle, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu in His infinite mercy decided to bless us with. So the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions all the issues in this context which really have to do with the what we would call the Islamization of Islamization of the people of the Muslims. Remember, these were all new Muslims, and people who had recently come into Islam. The Muhajirin, of course, they were older Muslims, and some of the Ansar were, but there were also people who were newly into Islam, and the idea here is to establish this thing in the minds and hearts of people that Islam is not only about worship rituals. The whole context of worship, and this is something, may Allah protect us, 15 centuries later, we still don't seem to have got this, right? That Islam is something more than a bunch of worship rituals. We think that Islam is, as long as we are praying and giving zakat and so on, once in a while we go for Umrah, and we do Hajj once in a lifetime, and we are good to go, right? And the rest of it is left to us. This is not the case. This is the whole thing about the Battle of Badr and everything else, and the whole thing about Islam itself. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kaffatan وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, O you who believe, enter into Islam completely and totally and fully, and do not follow in the footsteps of shaitan. He is your sworn enemy. He is your open enemy. He is blatantly there as your enemy. Don't follow his footsteps. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, and the ayat is directed towards, and the addressee of the ayat of this ayah are the Muslims. I am the addressee and you are the addressee. So therefore, it is very important to understand that Islam, this is what Allah is saying in the surah, and the Battle of Badr is establishing this, and the whole concept, the philosophy that Islam is a complete way of life, and that Islam does have and will have something to say to you about every aspect of your life. Islam is not simply restricted to rituals of worship. It comprises everything. All our all our affairs and everything to do with life. This is the message that is being given very, very clearly in this surah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned things in great detail. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws the attention of the Muslims to some of the still lingering, as we might say, moral shortcomings in their character, their meaning, their way of thinking, for example. And for example, what happened there was, as I mentioned earlier, there was a dispute with regard to the spoils of war. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now drawing attention to saying that He wants them to build an integrated and pure society, right? Integrated and pure society, and not be like everybody else. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then He talks about also the invisible assistance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down to His obedient slaves, who is obedient, the believers, to enable them to accomplish their goal of defeating the army of Quraysh. He wants the Muslims to rid themselves of any trait of haughtiness or arrogance with regard to any of this, and He wants them to turn to Him, Jalla Jalaluhu, for help, and to obey Him and to obey His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delineated the noble objectives for which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam launched that battle, and He directed the Muslims to the merits and qualities that brought about the great victory. In the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned the mushrikeen of Makkah, the polytheists, and He mentioned the hypocrites and so on, and prisoners of war. They were being admonished, and they were told to adhere to the truth and to stick with the truth and to leave all forms of falsehood. The first and foremost truth is to accept and obey and worship only and only our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jalla Jalaluhu. To deny that is the first and most critical falsehood that humanity falls into. The question of spoils of war also was resolved, and the principles and basic principles relevant to the issue of spoils of war also were clearly defined. The laws and rules pertinent to war and peace were legalized and codified. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the Muslims and wants the Muslims to follow war ethics very dissimilar, very different from those of pre-Islamic practices. In Islam, there is no prisoners of war are treated with decency, with respect, with security for them. There is no torture in Islam. There is no wanton killing in Islam. There is no killing of women and children, of priests, obviously of other religions, because Islam doesn't have priests. There is no destruction of places of worship. Right? Imagine, this is Islam. The war is being fought for the establishment of La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do not destroy churches, and do not destroy synagogues, and do not destroy temples, do not destroy places of worship. Now you might say, well, the in the church or in the synagogue or in the temple, Allah is not being worshipped. The opposite is happening. So why should we not destroy them? You should not destroy them because this is the hukum of your Rabb Jalla Jalla. Allah said, do not destroy them. Don't destroy the temples. Do not kill the priests and so on and so forth. Right? The thing is, when Muslims follow the rules and laws of Islam, there is one effect. When Muslims follow their own egos, right? So you conquer a land and then you destroy the temples, and on top of the temple you build a mosque. That has repercussions for hundreds of years later. Right? So, and somebody who had nothing to do with that suffers 1,000 years later, 500 years later, because of something which someone else did 500 years earlier. These are harsh realities. Whether anybody likes to accept them or not, these are harsh realities. And in Islam, it is not okay to say, well, somebody else also did that. Somebody else is not my teacher. Somebody else is not your teacher. Muhammad Rasulullah is your teacher. He did not destroy temples and build mosques on top of them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made these things very clear as far as the laws of war are concerned. Just war for the sake of, for the sake of war, for the sake of looting, for the sake of accumulating wealth. This is not permitted in Islam. No matter how, upbeat and gung-ho you might want to feel after talking about this battle and that battle and so on and so forth, the question to ask is, was that battle acceptable in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? And that's not something that you and I can debate and answer here. It's something we will find out when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyway, to come back to our subject, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Muslims that you are supposed to outdo others in terms of ethics and values and great ideals. We were sent to be role models to the world. We were not sent to follow the world in whatever the world was doing. Right? If that was the case, there was no need to send the Nabi alayhi salam. We were sent to show the world how to live, not to run behind the world and do what they do and then give that as a justification to say, well, so if I'm doing that, so what? Everybody else is doing that. Everybody else is not my teacher. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my teacher. His Nabi Muhammad ﷺ is my teacher. So the Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted. So therefore, Allah wanted to impress on the world that Islam is not merely a theoretical code of life. It is rather a mind cultivation oriented practical principles, a set of practical principles which are to be inculcated in the minds of people so that they establish, so that they understand how to live. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established this intra and interstate relations. Also at this time, it is something which is fast of Ramadan was established at this time. Ramadan also was made obligatory in the second year of Hijri, and also it was zakat had been there, but it also made fard. And one of the reasons was to alleviate the burden of the needy muhajirin. A wonderful coincidence, and of course this is not a coincidence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will, that Eid al-Fitr happened after the victory of Badr. It was the finest spectacle ever witnessed of Muslims leaving their houses, calling out and glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name and praise at the top of their voices, going to the place of prayer and praying Salatul Eid. And so alhamdulillah, this was a very beautiful thing that happened thanks to the Battle of Badr and thanks to the making fard of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned some of this, and he said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واذكروا إذ أنتم قليل مستضعفون في الأرض تخافون أن يتخطفكم الناس فأواكم وأيدكم بنصره ورزقكم من الطيبات لعلكم تشكرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and remember, when you were few and you were reckoned weak in the land and you were afraid that people may kidnap you, but He, Jalla Jalaluhu, provided a safe place for you. He strengthened you with His help and He provided you with good things so that you might be grateful. And this is Surah Al-Anfal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayat. Rasulullah ﷺ was straightening the lines for the battle of Badr, and he was holding an arrow in his hand, like to point and make it straight. And he came to one of the soldiers, and his name was Sawad bin Quzayya radiallahu anhu, who was protruding forward. So Rasulullah poked him with this arrow to push him back, So Sawad immediately radiallahu anhu, he said, Ya Rasulullah, you hurt me, and I want to retaliate. So Rasulullah lifted up his garment, and he exposed his stomach, and he said, go, retaliate. Sawad radiallahu anhu bent down, he hugged Rasulullah and he kissed him on his belly. Rasulullah was obviously very surprised. He said, Ya Sawad. He said, why did you do that? He said, Ya Rasulullah, you know what is going to happen just now in the battle. I don't know if I will live or die. And if I die, I want the last thing to happen in my life for me to touch you. And that's how they loved him. They loved him, in a way that is, subhanAllah, it's impossible for us to even imagine how much the Sahaba loved Rasulullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that kind of love in our hearts, love for His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu, which is really an indicator, and it's a meter, and it's a measure of our love for Islam and our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no one in the world who claims to love, who can claim to love Allah and who can claim to love Islam, but who does not love Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is not possible. It is just not doable, right? Listen to my lecture on why love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is fard. That's a whole lecture in itself, so I don't want to go into that now. But it is fard, and it is a sign and a symbol and a meter and a measure of our Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen that from Himself. Jalla Jalaluhu. So when Sawad bin Quzayya radiallahu anhu said this, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for Sawad radiallahu anhu, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless him. And that is the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for all those who help in the cause of his deen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us this love of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now when people were congratulating, in one instance, people were congratulating the people who fought in Badr, and one of the Ansari Sahaba, he said that was not difficult. They were like old camels waiting to be slaughtered, so we slaughtered them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reprimanded him, and he said, don't say that. These are the chiefs of Quraysh, and you could not have defeated them. You could not have defeated such an army without the help of Allah. So thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help. He said, do not become arrogant in this. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam completed all his preparations and when he had exhausted all the worldly means, then he turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he raised his hands, like this up, so that his blessed armpits were visible, and he was wearing a cloak, and the cloak fell from his back. And he started making dua, and he said, oh Allah, I appeal to your pact, I appeal to your promise. If you wish, then after this day, if you wished, then if this army, if this small group of people, if they perish, then there will not be anybody to worship you on the earth after this day. He said, oh Allah, help me, you promised to help me. Oh Allah, help me, you promised to help me. And he went on with this. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu heard him for some time, and then he saw how anguished he was and how much he was begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He went to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, bas. He said, enough. Your Rabb promised you victory, and He will give you victory. So don't exhaust yourself even more. And this is again the love of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this is the essence of tawakkul. This is the essence of tawakkul. To do all in your power, and then to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and place the matter in His hands and ask for His help. Right? This is the whole essence of tawakkul. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis sabri was salat. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. This ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, the tafsir of that, the living explanation of that is the Battle of Badr. Allah said, O you who believe, seek the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through sabr and salah, through making all your preparation and all the effort and putting your utmost into the thing, and then raising your hands and begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his help. With sabri wa salah. Inna Allah ma'a sabirin, verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the sabirin, with people who have sabr, who have patience. The hadith that Rasulullah mentioned, he said, the bird leaves its nest in the morning and returns in the evening with a full stomach. This shows tawakkul. The bird, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala feeds the bird but not in the nest. So the bird does not remain in its nest. It leaves the nest, it searches for food all day, and it returns home with a full stomach in the evening. So searching for food is the job of the slave. To ensure that he finds the food is the job of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now in searching for the food, the slave does not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Allah does not, the slave does not disobey Allah, does not take something which is haram. The slave searches for food as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to search for food without indulging in haram. What Allah promised, Allah will give. Allah does not need you or me to do something which He prohibited in order to earn our money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again in Surah Al-Anfal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرًا وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ بِهِ قُلُوبُكُمْ وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Allah said, and remember, when you sought the help of your Rabb, He answered. He answered by saying, I will help you with 1,000 of the angels, each behind the other, following one another in succession. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it only as glad tidings, and that your hearts be at rest therewith. There is no victory except from Allah. Verily Allah is Almighty, All-Wise. Now think about this. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to end this world, and whatever is meant by ending of the world, whether it's the entire universe, whether it's a piece of the universe, whether it's only this earth or what, Allah knows best. Now, when Allah wants to end this, what is going to happen? What is the means by which Allah will end this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give a command. He will command one angel, Israfil alayhi salam, to do what? To blow the sur, to blow the trumpet. Israfil alayhi salam will go, that's it. And everything will finish. Everything. We are not talking about one battle. We are not talking about one battle with 300 people on one side and 1,000 people. No. We are talking about the whole world, as I mentioned it. Allah knows best the details of it. But the whole world and all that it contains at that time, when that time comes, with all its technology and this and that and everything else and the armies and you name it, right? Whatever is in the earth on that day, it will not be there anymore. For that to happen, it is going to be one angel who will just go, that's it. The angel will not come down and do anything. He from wherever he is. Then why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send 1,000 angels to help the Muslims in the Battle of Badr? This 1,000 angels is the honor, were sent to honor Rasulullah. Allah is saying, you asked me, I will send you 1,000 angels. Not because you need the 1,000 angels, but because to show. There is a nice video on YouTube of Queen Elizabeth's visit to Germany. And it's you see she is in I think it's a Land Rover or something she is in, and a couple of Land Rovers behind. But in front of that, there's this wedge of, I don't even know how many motorcycle cops. So it's like maybe 100 or more, right? So it's this huge wedge of police, and then this one car behind that with the British flag, and a couple of other cars behind her, and she's going. Now think about that. Here is this lady. He has to go from point A to point B. Why does she need all this stuff? She's not riding those bikes. Does she need all that? No, this is the way in which the monarch is honored by the host country, right? Now here is somebody for whom the whole kainat is created, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah honors his Nabi alayhi salam. And he said, this is how we will honor you. 1,000 angels. And at the end of that, Allah is saying the victory didn't even come because of the angels. The victory is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always, always, always our attention is drawn back to the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. There is no one worthy of worship except Allah, because la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Nobody can do anything except Allah. He is Rabbul Alameen. This is the thing to keep in mind, always, always. And this is the thing to establish and as the foundation on which everything else is based. Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, radiallahu anhu, he asked to be released. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, ransom yourself. So Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu said, Ya Rasulullah, I am a Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, we will go by what we can see. Your iman is between Allah and you. You were with the army of Quraysh, and as far as we are concerned, we consider you to be an enemy. Now this is the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now he is a Muslim, he was a Muslim, he has been helping Rasulullah. Subhanallah, Ajib situation. Think about that, huh? He has been helping Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from day one. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knows he is a Muslim. But what does he say? He said, we go by what we see. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, is he a Muslim? Send me wahi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have informed him. No. Principles of justice are being established here. You are my uncle. That's beside the point. Here, you came with the army of the Quraysh. You came to fight us. You came as our enemy. In the battlefield, you were our enemy. I don't know the exact details when Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu was fighting. Did he kill anybody or not? We don't know. He was in the battle. He must have done something. He wasn't just standing there. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, your iman is between you and Allah. You are with the army of Quraysh, and as far as we are concerned, you are the enemy. Abbas radiallahu anhu said, I have no money. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what about the money you buried and told Fadl to use it in case you die? Huh? Wallahi, subhanallah. What days these must have been. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of what Al-Abbas did in Makkah. Fadl is his wife, radiallahu anha. So Al-Abbas buried money, gold coins, and he told his wife, in case I die, use that money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed him. Informed Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah would not have informed him that Al-Abbas is a Muslim. Principles are being established. Justice is being established. It doesn't matter. Even if you are the uncle of the Nabi alayhi salam, you are subject to the same laws as anybody else. So, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, what about that money you buried there? And you told Fadl. Who is Fadl? His aunt. Yeah? He said, you told her to use the money in case you die. Use it now. Allah said, Ashhadu annaka Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. He said, I bear witness that you are the Rasul of Allah. Because nobody knew of this money other than me and my wife. And then he paid his ransom. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, that's why he said in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to get wahi about what is in the hearts of people. After him, we do not get any wahi so we will go by what we can see. We do not allow anyone to fool us, nor do we suspect anyone unnecessarily. This is the principle. We go by what we can see. We don't fool anybody, and we don't allow anyone to fool us. We don't suspect anyone unnecessarily. If somebody is behaving correctly, then we go by that. We don't say, no, but you see in his heart there is something else. We don't know what is in his heart. Even Rasulullah, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have informed, and maybe he even knew what was in the heart of Al-Abbas, he said no. As far as we are concerned, what we are seeing here is you came as an enemy of the Muslims and we will treat you as an enemy. And therefore you have to ransom yourself. So this is the principle in Islam. We go by what we can see. We do not allow anyone to fool us, and we also do not suspect anyone unnecessarily. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu to help us to follow His beautiful deen and to keep us away from everything which displeases Him. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya rabbal alamin.